It's Steam Next Fest October 24, which means I'll be doing lots of themed videos about various types of games and demos that I played during the festival. Do they stay on my wish list? Do I like them? Let's see. Today's video is all about rhythm and music games, and the first one on this list is Aaero 2, which I absolutely adore. I loved the original game that came out a few years ago, and Madfellows are back with a sequel that just polishes an already fantastic gem. The beauty of Aaero 2 is that it balances two different elements of rhythm action style game tropes and merges them together, making it more left brain, right brain the further you get into the game, which makes it more complicated and difficult to deal with. The first thing is that you'll be tracing ribbons of light that go through various different like cavern systems or weird technical worlds, and you'll see the light kind of scroll around like a 360 tunnel, and you'll use the left analog stick to rotate your ship around so that it sticks to it. If you manage to stay with the light as it rolls and spirals around and does all kind of weird gymnastics, then you will be up for a top high score. The second element is borrowing from your Child of Edens, your Reses and your on-rail shooters, where you've got a reticule that you'll be able to move around with the right analog stick, and then you'll be able to press and hold and kind of lock onto various missiles that can then fire on the beat of the music, if you do it properly, to then cause damage to various enemies that are coming to attack you. They will start firing missiles at you too, which you can dodge around with the left analog stick or try and shoot out of the sky with the missiles. And by using those two things combined, the early game sees you kind of flipping between the two disciplines, but as you get more progressively difficult tracks or raising up the difficulty levels, then things get trickier because you'll have to balance both, and so you'll be rotating around on the light ribbons whilst also shooting out enemies from the sky. The soundtrack is superb. It's very Monster Cat heavy, but I am a sucker for that type of music with this type of game. And visually this game is smooth like butter, and I think that might almost detract from the speed and urgency of all the different things that you're trying to do because of how smooth and fluid and beautiful this game looks and feels. Actually, it makes things feel more approachable and perhaps less impressive in trailer form than what it feels like when you're playing the thing. And so my request for everyone is, if you pick one demo from this selection to go and try out, Aaero 2 would be my recommendation. Talking of visual aesthetics and going down a tunnel, Hyperbeat is the next recommendation that I've got on this list, and again stays on my wish list. And your first thing you'll notice is it's like PS1 era Persona went a bit psychedelic with Alice in Wonderland. It's the aesthetic for this game, and I really dig it, and I think a lot of other people too, because it's tapping into that retro 90s throwback area that I feel's got a lot of traction at the moment. But the proof of the pudding in this game is, again, just like Aaero 2, in the gameplay. You move around with the left analog stick, but you have different buttons to hit depending on the targets that are coming towards you, and this is like tunnel platformer on rail shooter version of Beat Saber, because the different targets that are coming towards you require different button presses depending on which arrows it wants you to swipe your sword, because you're playing as a knight flying through a dream. The nuance here is that as the tracks get more tricky, you can no longer use the left analog stick to just kind of bank your way around and stay on the edge of the tunnel. Things start to appear in the middle, and it takes an awful lot of precision and skill to place yourself in the centre of a tunnel, or just slightly to the left, right, up or down, rather than just full tilting it, because the character matches how far and hard you push your analog stick as you move around. And that took me quite a bit of getting used to score well in this game. On the flip side, what I loved about this is the heavy reliance on jungle and rave inspired music. This game is visceral, and whilst Aaero 2 brings a lot of beats and heavy Monster Cat drum and bass, like proper coming through, this is like much more heavy hardcore hitting. And so one's buttery smooth, one is jagged and rough and ready, and both are very worthy of your time, and I'd recommend both. My preference at the moment is slightly towards Aaero 2 rather than Hyperbeat, but both are top tier rhythm games that I cannot wait to buy on day one. The next game I'll also be buying on day one, this video is very expensive for me, is Taiko no Tatsujin Rhythm Festival. And this is a drum-based rhythm game that I've imported from Japan in a previous PS4 iteration of it. And I bought it with the Taiko drum controller. Now, I love that Taiko drum controller, and you can use it on PC as well because it's USB connected. And it basically divides your Taiko drum or your controller, depending on what you're using it, into two different types of hits. A don, which is hitting one button or the centre of the Taiko, or a ka, which is hitting the rim or a different button. And you'll have either a press 2 dons or 1 don button, or 2 kas and 1 ka button. And that's all you've got to worry about, and it all comes through on a single line of screen. Where Taiko no Tatsujin Rhythm Festival is trying to be different is I think this is the first time that this is coming to PC, especially in the Western world, possibly ever, if not for just decades. And that's fantastic. But the game is also doubling down on the party theme. So now you can have up to 4 players playing at once. There's different modes, such as a race mode. So the more you get right, the closer your Taiko drum character gets to the right-hand side of the screen, which means you've got less visual warning for what's coming next for you to stay correct and accurate and win the race. There's other modes where actually it breaks away from the single line of things coming at you, and it will go up and down the screen. And there'll be 76 songs available in the base game with 4 different difficulties across them all. And it does get challenging and very visceral and like hyper button mashy if you want to go up the difficulties. But one of the big strengths of the Taiko series is the sheer crazy variety of types of music that you get. There's always a classical selection, an anime, a Vocaloid, a game music, J-pop. I expect some Western stuff to be thrown in there because of the more global nature of this game too. I'm super excited. My only slight reticent on this game is the DLC or season pass type thing it seems to be alluding to. So when I was in the game, there's this Taiko Music Pass, which allows you access to about 700 additional songs, and some of those songs will be made available individually, but it feels like a Just Dance pass where you're going to have to pay things repeatedly to get access to the full version of the game. And I'd rather buy something to own the songs, and I know I'm air quoting owning because of just digital game licenses these days and the ridiculous nature of how we've not really got access to the own things that we buy. And don't get me on a rant about that, this isn't the video for it, but that Taiko Pass feels dubious for me because I've been bitten on these things before, and you never truly own the experience, and then it can be taken away from you and you've spent all of that money and got nothing to show for it. So mild caution there, but the solid game itself plays fantastically and I can't wait to grab it. The next game on this list was a total surprise for me because I'd never heard of it before, and it's called Nientum Opus Zero or Op Zero, and this is a game that blends together the idea of making you feel like you're playing a runner platformer, but it is a rhythm action game too. And it's designed in a way very similar to your Muse Dash games of this world, where you've got 2 lanes of buttons to press. And I was using the keyboard, so I had F for one side and J for the other. But it's done on a puppet stage, as if a dramatic version of your dreams has come to life. And so it's got this really cute and inventive and creative aesthetic where the world is constantly changing around you, but elements of it is kind of flipping in and out, and there's shadow puppetry, and like the enemies that are trying to attack you are being dangled by string, and the stage is collapsing and moving around, but it's all mechanical. I love the way how this game is set up, and it brings so much character and personality to Nientum Opus Zero. So much so that it reminded me a little bit of a rhythm version of what the Puppeteer game on PS3 was like, and I adore that game. The gameplay actually going through the levels is sublime too. The patterns are really well put together, they match the music and chart very well, and there's different difficulty levels of like a normal and a hard for each level as it goes through. And part of it is getting the rhythm right, but the other thing is because you're moving through these platform sections at quite high speed sometimes and zipping back and forth and diving between platforms, spotting some of the hits is actually part of the challenge. And so as you get used to the charts and the way how the music is moving, sometimes you get into more of a second nature of what you think might be hit, just as much as when you actually see it too. But yeah, I found this utterly charming, instant wish list, will be a day one buy for me. Pleasantly surprised at Nientum Opus Zero. The next game on this list feels like the most experimental and potentially breaking new ground rhythm game that's out there, and it's called Jazzhands, and it's gesture controlled, so you will need a webcam for this one to work. The gestures of the webcam refer to your hands, and so you need to put your hands into certain positions for the cam to then register it, for you to then change your hand gestures to the beat of the music as it comes down. And so there's waves, and then there's like showing a fist bump, and then there's like the peace sign, or it's a thumbs up, or you're kind of waggling and waving your hands around. And the technology doesn't appear to be quite well refined yet, because I was finding that actually it was really hit and miss as to whether or not it was picking things up. And there was a definite delay in it picking things up. And so what I was doing as I was playing around with Jazzhands was making sure that I got my hands into positions early so that it matched the cymbals as it was coming across. And the game kind of lets you do that. But if this gets finessed over time, and you'll need good lighting, and you'll need a webcam that allows you to put your hands in a nice easy position, because I was kind of at a weird angle, so my hands felt awkward. I think Jazzhands has the potential to be a real cute sleeper hit, so it's absolutely on my wish list, and I'll be watching this develop with pure intrigue over time, because there's nothing out there like this that feels so mixed reality for PC for rhythm action games. So yeah, super looking forward to where this goes, and it doesn't need any hardware like proper VR either, so thumbs up. Next up on this list is Starduster, and it's a music and rhythm experience that allows you to spin around a central reticle to let in the golden stardust but avoid any other spike balls that are flying in your way. And all of the different things come into the rhythm of the music that's going on. It's exacting, you need precise precision to get it right as you move around and collect only the golden bits and ignore all of the rest of the colours that are flying in. And the level design charts are designed in a way to try and catch you out. And that's what I mean by left brain, right brain, because the amount of times I made the same stupid mistakes and I was kicking myself, but I was having good fun learning and getting better at it over time. I think this will be one of those minimalistic rhythm games that will be a sleeper hit that will gain word of mouth over time. And it plays well. It's just there's an immediate difficulty curve here for you to kind of unpick your brain and make sure you're doing the right thing and steering out of the way of some attacks whilst collecting others. Just takes a little bit of brain rewiring in a rhythm action world, and when you get the hang of that, Starduster then really shows its form. So a big thumbs up for me, stays on my wish list, will be something that I'll definitely pick up on release as well. The next game on this list is called O, and it's an O with the umlaut on top. And this game is fascinating because it's tricky to understand, but it's also quite dynamic and procedurally generated because it's a dungeon crawler relating to music. Each song that you can choose from is broken down into 4 key components, and it's often like the drums, the bass, the guitar and the synths or something like that. And you're able to, at certain points, flip between the different instruments so that you can then get different rhythm charts to match the drums, the bass, the guitar or the synths as you're moving around. But as you move through room to room through the procedurally generated dungeon, the enemies will match their move sets to what you're listening to and playing with as well. And so what you're needing to do is to move exactly to the beat of the chart that you've got in front of you. You lose health if you do it wrong, but also the enemies will be charging at you or moving and bouncing towards you and making attacks, and you can't directly attack them back. You have to move to alongside them or nearby them to do radial damage. And so there's this kind of getting close and flirting with danger, but never dancing too close to them so that you then get hit by their attacks. And the idea is that everyone in the room is like a dancer of an enemy or someone that you can flirt with, but you don't want to dance alongside them and crash into each other. So it's really weird, but it works. It takes a while to tune your brain in to get this right. You can employ different strategies too, so you can be a bit more hands-off, but therefore not clear rooms nearly as quickly. You can try and be on the beat and be very aggressive and try and clear as many enemies as possible, but that can quite often put you in dead ends or awkward blocked in scenarios where you might end up getting damaged. And the more you combo things up, you get higher ranks, which then mean that you make more damage. And so being aggressive is quite often rewarded, but it will then mean that you run into more problems too. There are different maps that allow you to then augment different instruments. They do different styles of attack and maybe have longer reach or cause more damage. This is like it's not Crypt of the Necro Dancer, but it isn't. That's a terrible way to describe this game, but I feel like that's the closest that people will understand to what this game is trying to do, but it feels nothing like it. This is its own beast, and I really welcome this coming out. Stayed on my wish list, will definitely be picking this one up. The next game on this list is Travel on Pigeon, and this is a rhythmic puzzle platformer, so a complete change of pace. The idea of this is that you move to the visual cues or beat of the music, your pigeon from square to square around the dance floor of the city that you're traversing, picking up souvenirs along the way, and hopefully they will be able to give you fashionable defences from the enemies that are moving also to the beat of the music around the levels. This is around choosing the right point to kind of make a dash through and survive really narrow corridors with enemies moving back and forth. It feels like a rhythmic stealth game for want of a better descriptor, but lots of different areas of the floor will modify the rhythm and the speed and the BPM of what your enemies are doing and potentially what you can do too. So it might be that you can make twice as many moves in a beat compared to other people or vice versa, and that can help you kind of win or lose a level. I somewhat struggled with this to a degree, and whilst it is staying on my wish list, I don't think I'll be picking it up, certainly not on day one. And the reason why is that the visual cues and the movement don't seem to match up. And so whilst you're trying to move to the beat of the music, that's off key from when you need to press the button to move, which again doesn't always seem to register when the visual cue's telling you to move, and it just felt stilted and awkward at certain points, and then it would clip together and it would work for a while and it felt all synced up, and the game was quite enjoyable, and then it would fall out of sync again. And so it's kind of, I like the premise of this. I think it would be relatively easy as an experience to play, but I wasn't sold on it nearly as much as most of the other games on this list, and so it's staying on my wish list, but I won't necessarily be grabbing it on day one. With the next game, called The Shaman's Arc, we're taking the rhythm action genre into a dark Metroidvania setting that's all around rhythm-based combat. The idea behind this is that you're the shaman that's descended from the heavens and is now trying to find their way out of various different weird and wonderful monster environments and dark and dingy caverns and interesting spaces. I quite like the aesthetic of this game, and I like the fact that you can use your shaman drum to turn on lights and pull switches and open doors and interact with the environment. But the real key here from a rhythm and music perspective is the battles. And it takes a bit more of an RPG-like turn, because it's as if you're going into an RPG battle, but each enemy has its own rhythmic beat, and they will feel a bit like QuickTime events, but it is rhythmic, where you'll use your shaman drum to attack, defend, and send off various different magic, and the different icons that will fly down to the shaman beats will need to be matched, and if you fail it, you'll either prolong the battle because you're not attacking the enemy, or you're going to be taking damage very quickly, and it's quite harsh with the attack damage it gives you. So you need to be like in tune with the rhythmic beat of this game to do very well. I really like the setting and the layout of this. It did feel a little bit rough around the edges from the platforming aspects of this game, but it's got a definite dark and dingy and shamanic vibe to it that feels slightly creepy and offsetting. And so I was pleasantly surprised and intrigued with this. It's definitely staying on my wish list. I'm not sure it's going to be a day one purchase, but it's definitely something that I'll be aiming to pick up in the future when it releases in 2025. The next game on this list sees rhythm and action integrated into a 2D adventure game, and it's called Songs of Hmong. In Songs of Hmong, you play as a Hmong girl called Xiao Miao, who is trying to help a mysterious old man in the forest recover his memories. And the idea is that he will then help her find the seed of the sacred tree. So lots of lore and mythology, and the game looks gorgeous. But the 2D platforming or adventure elements has a really weird way of doing platforming, and the rhythm action elements where you find scrolls that allow you to sing ancient songs back to this old man for him to regain his memories are really weirdly put together too. So taking on the adventure side of things, there's no jump in this game, so when you want to go up hills or navigate through different layers of the 2D platforming, you have to keep running to the end, and it will always take you up a slope as you come across it. But it means that you're constantly having to run back and forth to just get up a really tiny slope that looks like if I just had a jump button, I could do this in a couple of seconds rather than 30. And then when you get to the top, there's no way for you to get back down again because it doesn't seem to let you go down. So you just walk off the edge, and that feels like the most convoluted way of doing any kind of ascending and descending of height in a game from an adventure platformer ever. So that felt really weird. Crucially though, the rhythm action elements also feel strange. It's a 6-key layout on the keyboard that relate to the songs that you're singing, but the notes don't seem to correspond very well and chart with the music. There doesn't seem to be any tempo control here. It barely relates to the actual songs from the notes. It's definitely not chord structures, and it definitely doesn't flow well either. And so the rhythm elements felt not tacked on, but not integrated, so that they feel like someone who has experience in charting rhythm games has been able to wax their skills on this. It felt very rudimentary and clunky. Also, because this game is keyboard and mouse controls only, you have to use the mouse to click on a very specific icon in every speech bubble for the game to proceed, and that felt, again, like it's not done any playtesting and is just not how a game plays at all. So with all of that, I've kept it on my wish list from a morbid curiosity point of view because I think there's something here, but it needs an awful lot of work for it to feel intuitive and provide a streamlined and enjoyable user experience for a player. The final game on this list is the only one that didn't survive my wishlist cull, and it's Drumguy. Drumguy is an action-adventure game that's a brawler, very similar to games like Uppers, for example, where you're going through small contained environments and a wider map, going up against mobs of enemies that are unhinged fans or other bands that are trying to take you out so that you can't get to Rockstar Studios to perform as the drummer. The idea behind this is that it's supposed to be rhythmic battles, but I found that the rhythmic element of it felt few and far between, and it was more about reacting to visual colour coordinated cues from the mobs that are trying to attack you. But a lot of the time, the attacks that they're trying to do don't require blocking, and in fact blocking is sometimes the worst thing you can do, because there's an overpowered dash move that can get you out of the vicinity of anyone's attack. So it felt like as soon as someone was going to try and attack me back, I'd just dash out of the way and immediately dash back in and start attacking. And it kind of overpowered the game and broke the whole gameplay mechanical loop of it. The other thing with this, and it might just be the technical demo that's out there at the moment, is that the game has this aesthetic where it feels like it's trying to stylize struggling. And so the frame rate feels jagged, and so does the movement, but then at times it's also fluid. But it's not that the game feels like it's technically falling over. It's as if that's a stylistic choice where things become choppy, and then there's like really big brash giant orange backdrops that will fly in to try and make it feel more cartoony and colourful. But then that means that things become even more ragged and jagged because it's trying to like freeze frame things. And it just doesn't work when you're trying to put that on top of a rhythm-based, brawling gameplay mechanic. And it just doesn't hang well together at all. And so I found this game really difficult to enjoy, and it was the only one that I removed from my wish list. I do think other people might get more out of it though, but I just think there's more games that do this type of thing better, and the rhythmic elements felt forced to a point where it didn't really work. And what really confused me is that there's the kind of a little drum in the top centre of the screen that implies that there's a beat that's going on that pays no attention to any beat of any music, nor the buttons that you're pressing either. And so it just felt like it was miscommunicating everything that it was trying to do. So, bit of a shame, that one. Potential for a little bit of polish to make it better in the future, but not for me. And that's my rhythm music collection of games from Steam Next Fest. There were plenty of others out there too, but I just picked the ones that were immediately interesting to me and games that I've not previously covered on this channel, because quite a few had demos out that I've already covered previously. So hope that was helpful. Let me know what you wish listed, and I'll be back with another Steam Next Fest video very shortly. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.